doing a sound check. So if you're just catching a video of this after the fact, give me 1 second. Let's make sure this is working. Let's chat about Freemasonry. Yesterday, I talked about Freemasonry in Iran, which is really interesting. It's a fascinating history. And it's working. All right. It was really cool to see that history. We're going to go public. All right. By the way, I am 9 subs away from 3,300 subs. I hope you guys will check that out. Also, hope you guys will answer the questions that I have posted when it comes to Freemasonry on Iran. I posted a couple of quizzes on my YouTube channel, supporting the channel in a lot of different ways, including and not limited to, yes, watching this stream, and watching the streams is obviously incredibly helpful. And be grateful for anybody who joins, but it's just one of many types of streams. You can or ways to support the channel, excuse me. You can also, for example, comment on our posts, check out our homepage, become a member, super chat, all that good jazz. Hello, Dream Seeker. I'm doing well. How are you doing? I hope that you are doing well. By the way, in case anybody's curious, the previous two questions I asked, sources name Asker Khan Afshar as the first Iranian Freemason. In what city was he initiated? He was initiated in Paris in 1808. The other question I asked was, an independent Grand Lodge of Iran was formed in December of what year, with Hossein Allah as its Grand Master and Taqi Eskanadi as its Grand Secretary? So far, three people have answered, and no one has got that correct as of yet. So what I'm going to do is hold off, give it a bit of time, wait to see if anybody answers that and gets it right. Tonight, by the way, I'm going to Tilbury Masonic Lodge. So I'm looking forward to that. Well, it's an interesting question, Dream Seeker. It depends, because if you count, for example, my attending Masonic meetings and Masonic events, it's a lot of hours, right? If you want to talk about just the podcast, it's less. But I try to do 8 hours a day, and I'm going to include within that travel to Masonic events. Hello, MD Myth. Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. Also, a good way to support this channel is to share it with other people. So, if you come across this stream ever, I hope you'll consider supporting, sharing it, sharing the link on your Facebook, all that good jazz. It helps out big time. I mean, but if you count, for example, the 24-hour live streams, then it's a lot. So there's that as well. Hello, Jonathan122. How's it going? Thank you for being here also. I hope you're doing well. Currently, by the way, I'm also on a few other locations, including Podbean, where I'm at 6,000 all-time downloads. So on my way to 10,000. I don't really post anything new on that channel, though. But it's still there. Well, I hope everybody will take a few moments to go to, as I spit on the screen, I hope everybody will take a few moments to go to Dream Seekers, the Dream Seekers YouTube channel, and help him get his watch hours. I believe in free will? I do believe in free will. Dintism. I also believe that you have the free will to hit that like and subscribe button, and would be greatly appreciated. The the reason I believe in it ultimately is because I can't imagine what it is to not have free will. Like, I can't imagine not, like, I don't know what that would look like. Like how does one live without free will? And if I can't imagine how to live without free will or what that means, like I don't know what the test would be. What is the test to determine if I have, there's no switch you can pull. Like even if I say I will choose to act as though I have no free will, I'm still making a choice. So I hope that makes sense. Also, I suppose I should believe in free will from a Masonic perspective because one of the things that is a requirement within Freemasonry is that you join of your own free will and accord. Um, Maybe, but again, I don't know what it would look like. I don't know. I have no way to, I cannot imagine a world, or I cannot imagine an experience which does not seem to reflect this idea of me having free will. Whether I have it or not, it's like I don't know what it would mean to live in such a way as you don't have it. Other than there has been some studies that demonstrate that people who don't believe in free will tend to lapse into much more frequently and much more quickly despair, despondency, nihilism, etc., etc. Just doing a quick poll. Give me one sec. Read John 15. Solomon is not God, buddy, or the master architect. Well, I don't believe Solomon is God. I don't even know if Solomon existed for sure, right? He could have been a mythological or biblical figure and not real. But Solomon is, whether he existed or not, literally, he's certainly an important historical and biblical figure, as well as an important figure within Freemasonry. However, the way you say that, I think Jorge Matez or Jorge George, I can't, George Tamas, whatever your name is, Freemasons have no quote unquote God. Freemasonry is not a religion. I'm saying X more and more frequently nowadays. Um, Hiram Abiff as well. I mean, we don't know for sure he existed. In the Bible, there's no actually Hiram Abiff. There's just a Hiram. They don't mention his last name. But the extent to which he was a real person and not a mythological figure, I don't think we know for sure. So you need to keep that in mind, right? A lot of this, when it comes to the Bible, I'm not a theological expert, I'm not a biblical scholar. I can just say it, I think for a lot of these figures and a lot of historical events, the extent to which they are literally true, mythologically true, or mythological, literal, historical, spiritual, I think it gets kind of complicated. Um, yes, I got a big nose. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Well, I definitely don't think he was AI. Artificial intelligence is a very recent invention. Yes, I got a big nose. Please hit like and subscribe. I've grown to accept the fact I have a big nose. What can I say? Um, shouldn't stop you from any like and subscribe. Also, what are you doing on streams talking about the way people look? Don't you have other things to do with one's life? Well, Solomon, I mean, Gui, you can trust or not trust whomever you want, I suppose. Solomon would have been from the Middle East, um, right? King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. And again, had a lot of, the extent to which the stories of him are true, the extent to which he truly existed, um, I think is up for debate. Though most scholars likely believe he existed. So it's interesting. Well, I mean, Huck Chili, I think that is the issue, right? What you say, free will doesn't exist. Look into Robert Sapolsky, right? Even the way you say that implies that free will does exist because If you truly believed free will did not exist, you wouldn't say, please ignore the trolls, because whether I ignored the trolls or not would be outside of my control. It would simply be, whatever the universe so fated me to do, I would do. Um, and even asking me to look up Robert Spikolsky, you could argue that there's no free will there either. Whether I do or do not is completely independent of you requesting it. It just is what it is. So that's kind of one of those old issues, right? Again, what does it actually mean to exist in a way that does not believe in free will? Dexter Morgan, you can also do anything, including hit the like and subscribe button. Um, Sean, I hope you will activate your free will to hit the like and subscribe button. Um, User, I'll take it. I got great haircut. What's wrong with my haircut? Well, I mean, it could be a combination of both, right? I mean, it's kind of like Troy and the Trojan War. When you go back that far in time, the question you have to ask is like, you know, was there a king of Troy? Was there a Troy? Probably. Was there a war? Probably. Humans have been going through wars forever. Um, was there an Achilles? Was there, did he sulk in his tent? Was there a Trojan horse? It starts to get way more complicated. But there can be there can be a grain of historical truth surrounded by myth and mythologies designed to, designed to show messages and spread messages based on any number of different things, based on ways to spread wisdom, could be based on nationalistic desires, right? The Greeks want to make themselves seem good, so they write about how they tricked the Trojans. Who knows? Well, I appreciate you being here, Sean. We're talking about Freemasonry. I'm a Freemason. I've been a Freemason for 20 years, just about. Um, Ben Z, thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. So I talk about Freemasonry. The purpose of this channel, Square and Compass Promotions, is to promote the ways Freemasonry was and is relevant to the communities in which it is located, and also post stories of Masonic interest. I do these streams to chat with people in public about, or on YouTube, I should say, about Freemasonry, share my thoughts, my beliefs on it, all that good jazz, and try to turn my passion for Freemasonry into a profession. So, Carlos, some Masonic lodges do that. In fact, some Masonic lodges do go to different events. They'll go to, community parades, parks, festivals, fairs, and they'll set up booths and maybe they'll create some swag. Like they'll give out pins or coins or who knows, frisbees, whatever it might be. It just depends on the lodge, their budget, things like that. For a long time, unfortunately, it was kind of this belief, or a lot of Freemasons had this idea that they were not allowed to, quote unquote, improperly solicit, which what they meant by that is you weren't even allowed to talk about being a Freemason to others. Thankfully, that is an idea from the past. Most people nowadays recognize it actually is okay to talk about Freemasonry. You don't, you never want to tell people they have to attend or should attend or whatever it might be, but rather they are encouraged if you talk about what you love about Freemasonry, why you love it, what it's meant to you, and people from there can decide whether they do or do not want to attend. So, or even learn more about it. It's not about encouraging others to join, rather, it's about talking about your experiences or my experiences as a Freemason, why I love it. And maybe that encourages some people to reconsider or consider joining. Great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. I'm just happy to talk about it and my experiences. I've never heard of the Yorkish Rite, but the York Rite, yeah, I love the York Rite. A lot of my good friends are York Rite Masons and great people. Um, well, Sean, again, a lot of people, and some people even in 2025, It really just depends on who you are and your personality, I think, more than anything. Some people tend to be very private, not just about Freemasonry, but about all different parts of their life, and tend not to want to talk about whatever it could be, including Freemasonry, which is fine. I have never been one to suffer from a desire for privacy. So I'm more than happy to talk about Freemasonry and my experiences therein as often as I can. I'll take it. Morgan Freeman's a very handsome person. Um, I mean, how do old school Masons feel about what I'm doing? Some support it, some don't. Some new school Masons support it, some don't. It really just depends on the individual. Um, so, first of all, we cannot make anybody join, nor should we. Second, frisbees are cool, so don't knock them. Third, Freemasonry does not result in the giving away of one's soul. So, despite what you may think, Dixon 777. Um, User asks a question I've got a few times. User KY5. Please like and subscribe, by the way. Asks a question I have been given a few different times in various forms. How do you know you're not a rip-off Freemason and not a real quote unquote Freemason? Another way to ask this question, right, is how do you know you're not in the inner circle of Freemasonry? How do you know there's not a higher degree of which you're not aware? How do you know that they're not hiding something from you? Who knows who they are, right? The answer I always give is twofold. The first is I can't know, right? It's not something I can know 100% for sure. In the same way, there are many things I cannot know 100% for sure. For example, I cannot know whether or not there is an invisible leprechaun living in my apartment. If the leprechaun was safe enough and careful enough, it could probably avoid ever running into me and avoid making a mess. And I would just never know that it lived in my apartment. And maybe it can go through walls. We can come and go as it likes, right? However, what I can use is reason, common sense, and observations and judge from there. So, when it comes to that, I've been a Freemason since 2007. So almost 20 years, or, you know, 19 years, I guess. I just say 20 years. I have attended over 1,000 Masonic events. I've attended them around the world. The Philippines, Rio de Janeiro, um, Bogota, Colombia, dozens of states, England, Scotland. I've been to Scottish Rite event, York Rite events, a variety of degrees in both emulation, York, Scottish Rite ritual. And I've never seen anything that would indicate there is any type of secretive or special level of Freemasonry beyond what I've seen and what I understand. Is it possible that I'm wrong? Sure. Is it likely? Well, all I can say is based on my observations, my reason, my common sense, I would say it is not the case. But I can never know for sure. But I mean, Freemasonry, it's not a religion, but there is a leap of faith involved, right? And that's true for everything you do in life, right? Like, anytime you choose to be part of something, you're taking a leap of faith that what you're choosing to be a part of is for the betterment of either oneself or one's community, or society, or all of the above. And at a certain extent and to a certain point, you just have to be willing to, um, you just have to be willing to, you do your research, you pay attention, you observe, and then based on what you observe and your common sense, you kind of decide, right? And what I can say again is in 20 years of being a Freemason, traveling around the world, visitations around the world, I've never seen anything that would indicate to me that there is a quote unquote secret level of Freemasonry or a cabal of Freemasonry or something outside of what I have seen. We may or may not have a handshake, Dixon. I'm not going to say. What I will say is, as you know, Dream Seeker points out, dues cards are the better way to tell if one is or is not a Mason. Um, User. I mean, Sean. Well, you don't have to have anything to do with Freemasonry. You're an adult. You can do whatever you want. What I would say is, it's neither a cult nor religion. If you don't want to have anything to do with Freemasonry, there's nothing wrong with that. Though you're on this stream, so that makes me think you do want to have something to do with Freemasonry. But you should not want to have anything to do with Freemasonry for the right reasons, right? Which is because it's not something you enjoy or not something you appreciate or whatever it is, right? If you are not joining Freemasonry or want nothing to do with it because you I don't know what the word is, because you think it's a cult or religion, then you have incorrect information. It would be like me saying, I don't want to eat chips because I don't like chocolate. It's a different thing. Hello, KY. Anne says, I hope you're not having a great day. Well, fair enough. That my dad's an old school Mason. Well, my dad is, I don't want to, I'm old. And if I'm old, my dad is old. So, by definition, I do not know what card check means, Sean, but I think whatever you think you've seen, you've not. Again, I've been talking about this for 5 years. Some Masons support it, some don't. The ones who don't support it have been more than happy to tell me they don't support it, which is perfectly fine, by the way. Not every Mason has to think the same or um, support the decisions I make. I even think my dad has some concerns about being on stream and talking about Freemasonry. But I think if Freemasonry is going to make it another 100 years, another 200 years, another 300 years, it needs to be open. It needs to be part of the world, including the social media part of the world. Thank you, KY. Don't forget, you can support many ways: liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, following me on social media, all that jazz. Yo, what's up, FOI? Yo, what's up to you as well? Thank you for being here. Linking Atlas, thank you for being here as well. I hope you're doing well. Please take a moment, hit that like button and subscribe button. I do my best, and I think you're right as well. It is absolutely a great way to get us out to the public. The purpose of this stream it's twofold. I mean, the purpose of Square and Compass Promotions, both the stream and the entire kind of business, is to promote the ways Freemasonry was and is relevant to the communities in which it's located, as well as provide stories of Masonic interest. But really, Daniel McCallick, it's to turn my passion for Freemasonry into a profession by content creation, and in doing so, I'm able to, turn my passion for Freemasonry into a profession. Well, I don't know what that means. There is no Masonic belief system. Again, there are Christian Freemasons, Jewish Freemasons, Muslim Freemasons, Hindu, Sikh. Like, there is no Masonic belief system. There are Masonic ideals, but that's no different than any other civic or community group. I mean, the example I always use um, is football, right? If you were a football player, let's say a professional football player on a sports team, the sports team is not about having beliefs. There may be a variety of beliefs on the sports team, but there are certain practices or certain ideals that are promoted. ideals like teamwork, practice, health, fitness, showing up for others, fair play, sportsmanship. That's not a belief system. Those are ideals or qualities enlightened or illuminated through Freemason through sports. Freemasonry is the same way. It's not a belief system, but there are certain ideals, tolerance, respect, teamwork, the value of being part of a group, um, recognizing the brotherhood of your fellow man beyond the narrow limits of religion or politics or civic institutions. Those are valuable, and those are valuable um, illuminated ideals, but they're not beliefs. That's right. What the heck is? I think they respect me. You are what you respect, though, not what respects you. Linking Atlas, I believe Scientology and Freemasonry is different. I mean, it's definitely different. I don't know enough about Scientology to say like what it is or anything like that, other than, to my knowledge, Scientology is a religion. Freemasonry occupies a civic or community space. Scientology occupies the religious space. They used to be stone workers, user. Freemasons I mean, they still, so stone workers are professions. They are a profession, right? They still exist, obviously. If you want to put a wall in your house made of stone, you're going to ask for a stonemason. Freemasonry came later. It evolved from stonemason guilds. So you had stonemason guilds or trade unions, basically, which had both a social component and a professional component. Speculative masons, such as myself, joined for the social component and just stuck around and eventually formed our own groups where we separated the social from the professional. Block top, a Freemason, Mason. A Freemason is a member of a civic or community group called a Masonic Lodge. Freemasonry is civic or community groups that evolved either directly or indirectly from stone Masonic guilds in the Middle Ages. When you say do a 360, you mean like turn around in my wheelchair? Have you hit the like and subscribe button yet? That's the better question. Well, again, you say you're hip to the history of what I believe in. I don't know exactly what you mean by that. I mean, I don't believe in Freemasonry any more than I would say I believe in, I don't know, like a knitting club. Like it's just a thing that exists, right? Within Freemasonry, there are rituals and ceremonies, but those aren't about beliefs. Those are about creating bonds of brotherhood through shared experiences, right? Some, for example, Freemasons may literally believe in, for example, the Bible, some the Quran, others may be indigenous, but Freemasonry is not a belief system in the way you are describing it. I wouldn't use the term charitable organization, KY, because there's a lot of different reasons, including tax reasons. And the purpose of Freemasonry is not charity, although we do a lot of charitable endeavors. It's a civic or community group or communal organization, right? No different than when you're a kid and you create a clubhouse with your friends. That's what Freemasonry is. It's just a clubhouse that's been around for over 300 years and has grown to such an extent. It does a lot of charitable as well as social activities and has helped people in a variety of ways in the social sphere, the charitable sphere, community building, and personal development. I don't know a lot about them, Dixon, but I mean, I'm a Rose Qua member, and Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism does share a lot of similarities. So the Shriners are cool. I would say the Shriners are the primary form of charity. or charitable side of Freemasonry, although there's also the Masonic Charitable Foundation. There's a ton of different charitable endeavors that Freemasonry is engaged with. The Shriners is perhaps the most forward-facing one. Although I would say in England, actually, to be honest, um, I would say it's actually probably Masonic Charitable Foundations out of United Grand Lodge of England. I have never met a Satanist Freemason user. Um, Chef. So Freemasonry is not a distortion of God's word, because Freemasonry does not have, it's not a religion. So if you're coming into Freemasonry and let's say you're a Christian, you are encouraged, you're not, I mean, encouraged, whatever the term is, God's word is for your faith and for you to go to the lodge, sorry, for you to go to church. God's word exists within the religious space. Freemasonry exists within the civic or community space. Um, so June 24th, 1717, Sean, that is kind of correct, but not really. Um, June 24th, 1717, um, is when the Premier Grand Lodge of England formed under the first Grand Master Sayer. You could argue Freemasonry started 1634 with the first speculative Masons joining a lodge in Scotland. But again, those aren't beliefs, those are just facts. It just is what it is. User asked if Freemasons play with the Ouija board on Halloween. I suppose it depends on kind of what you believe and what you do for fun. I mean, I've never heard of any Masons playing with Ouija boards, but I love anything scary and spooky, so I love Ouija boards, not just on Halloween. Um, Someone else. Oh, and I know that Dream Secrets, no worries at all. We got, I realized I missed a few comments. Stevie England. Sorry, Stevie England, I missed your comment. You do not have to be a stonemason to be a Freemason. Stonemasonry is a profession. Freemasonry is a community or civic organization. Pelican, that list, well, you should still like and subscribe nonetheless. Um, let's see. Hey, Sean, Show Love Clothing. Thank you for being here. Chef, Freemasonry is not demonic. User, honestly, I have known Masons and also family members of Masons who, when they pass away, their estate did not have enough money for either a funeral service or a tombstone or last rites, and Masons have stepped in to help cover the costs. There's also Masonic funeral service, which is one of our more well-known services, um, where we'll actually perform a Masonic funeral service for the brother who's passed away as a way to show respect both to him who's passed, as a way to say, like, we'll miss him and we cared for him and he was our brother. But also we do it in front of the family. And in some ways, I think it's a way to also say to the family of the deceased brother, thank you for allowing your husband, your father, your brother, like literal brother, your or blood brother, your whatever, your cousin, your grandson. Thank you for allowing him to share part of his life and now his death with us as Freemasons. So it's both a way to honor the fallen and in many ways to say thank you to, thank you for allowing us to share some of his life. So checkered flooring user, that's not everywhere. Um, a master's wages is an interesting topic, I would say. Hello, Eddie. I don't feel so young. I'm 42. Um, what type of cheese? Don't panic. Please like and subscribe. I would say a master's wages ultimately are the knowledge that he has done something to make the world a better place. Um, yeah, you're not wrong, KY. I don't know if you've been master yet, I forget, but I will say this, being the master and doing a Masonic funeral is in and of itself a pretty crazy thing as well. It's a great honor, but it's also a lot of pressure. Moral and philosophical belief systems. Again, though, if you want to use that, and don't get me wrong, I know some Freemasons will use the term it's a moral belief system, but if you want to use that term, I think you have to be willing to use it pretty expansively. Again, a football team has a moral and philosophical belief system, right? Whenever the coach gets the players together and tells them about the importance of practice, staying physically fit for your brothers, eating right, sportsmanship, not cheating, memorizing gameplays. Those are types of moral and philosophical belief systems, right? But you would never call being part of a football team kind of being groomed to a belief system. It's more that if you have the type of personality and belief system that prioritizes things like teamwork, practice, health, fitness, sportsmanship, not cheating, you're more than likely to end up going into team sports and doing pretty well at them. Um, so, Dixon, you are not wrong. That is a huge issue. Look, at the end of the day, and some Masons may not like me saying this when it comes to Masonic items that are, lost after a brother passes away. They, as much as Masons sometimes like to think otherwise, those items don't belong to the lodge. Every Masonic item I have belongs to me, for better or worse. You could argue that when, let's say, the the lodge gives, let's say, a worshipful master his past master's jewel, if you get him to sign a document saying, like, we shall return these items to you, to the lodge upon his death or something like that, then it's different. But if he doesn't sign anything, it's his for better or worse. It really is up to that brother to take a few moments, maybe a couple hours, to actually think about and write down. It should be in his will and to his family and tell the family what he wants to happen to his Masonic items when he passes away. In my opinion, the best thing you can do is pass it on back to the lodge. So you tell your estate, your next of kin, and you write it in your will. If I pass away, return all of these items to the Masonic Lodge. This is the contact person. This is the address. Make sure that they know exactly what where it goes. And tell them as well. Don't just put it in the will. Let them know. Uh, However, if the brother doesn't do that, and if they pass away and there's no clear instructions, I would hope the family, upon finding those items, would return it to the closest Masonic lodge, but they may not. They may choose to keep it, or they may choose to even, let's say they find a Masonic ring, they may choose, up being Masons, to wear the Masonic ring or even pawn the items. And unfortunately, if the Freemason, before he passed, did not take adequate steps to provide clear written instructions as to which Masonic items he has and where he wants them to go after he passes, then you're going to be in some trouble. And there's nothing that can be done about it. Um, which is why also I always remind Masons, just because you see somebody walking down the street wearing a Masonic ring, a Masonic hat, don't assume they're automatically Freemasons. It could be a matter of they picked them up in an estate sale, or a family member left it to them, or they found it in a storage locker. Like, you never know. Or if you want to be nice, Dixon, what you could do is you could purchase the item at a yard sale if it's not too expensive, and then return it to the lodge. be a bit of a hero. FA, I'm not going to tell you. For that, you got to join. I wouldn't doubt it. I would not doubt it at all. I found a lot of stuff in my travels. I did find once a whole collection that belonged to a Masonic lodge in a pawn shop. Or it was like one person passed away and his family pawned all of his Masonic items. It was this whole collection in a pawn shop. I tried to buy it, but it was too expensive. It was they priced it crazy high, which shows there's a market for people to buy this stuff, probably who aren't Freemasons. Maybe. FA again, I don't say what the G stands for. That's up to you. Um, or it's up to you to believe until you join, then you find out. We're going to give it a bit more time. As always, just hanging out, waiting to see who joins. Please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I hope everybody is doing well and having an excellent day. 13 days into 2025. I mean, when it comes to the occult, again, I'm not a big fan of the term occult because, oh, they take this off because it has so many connotations now in 2025. A lot of people, when they hear the term occult, they think of it as being like mysterious or having kind of, a lot of people hear the term occult and it has this kind of mystical, nefarious quality to it. Occult just means hidden. I mean, the recipe for your grandma's cookies, if she doesn't share it, could be considered occult, right? Um, but you don't, I mean, if you join Freemasonry, certainly you can learn kind of the private ceremonies and rituals within Freemasonry. But if you want to study the occult, quote unquote, in general, I mean, you don't need to be a Freemason to do that. Honestly, being a Freemason is probably the least effective way because occult is such a broad topic. I don't even know where you'd start. 403 years old. Oh yeah, I mean, I found a ton of Masonic items at yard sales, pawn shops, estate sales. If I can, I'll try to buy it, return it back to the lodge, but it really depends on how expensive it is. Again, I know that there's a market for these items because they're not selling them cheaply, right? And the fact that they're not selling them cheaply, to me, tells me there are people who aren't Masons willing to spend a lot of money to purchase them. I am the most important degree, which is third degree Master Mason. I am also, or that's the highest degree, I'm also 18th degree Scottish Rite. I don't know who Patrick Starr is, but I assume that's a very handsome fella. So there you go. I like that phrase, in the wild. I mean, part of it is the extent to which you're looking for it or not looking for it is a big issue as well. But, it's one of those things where um, it's kind of like the blue car effect, right? I think is the term. Frequency bias is actually the term, which is um, if you purchase a blue car, suddenly you see blue cars everywhere. If you join Freemasonry, suddenly, or are thinking about Freemasonry a lot, suddenly you're going to find a lot more examples of Freemasonry in your day-to-day life. Um, Never found stuff on Facebook Market, but I believe if I were to search, I'd probably find it. Reports World War III. That's not good. Who's saying that? Are they talking about America and Iran? By the way, I talked about Freemasonry in Iran yesterday. Please check it out. Trump says Iran protesters. Sorry. Trump says Iran meetings are off and help for protesters is on the way. We'll see what type of help that is. Well, don't join a cult, basic. That would be very bad. I don't think we should be trying to join any cults. If you're thinking about joining Freemasonry and you think Freemasonry is a cult, you would be extremely disappointed. What I will say, just on this topic, a lot of people ask why it is that I spend time talking about, for example, national or local economic, political, social conditions. I've said this before, you cannot separate the success of a Masonic lodge from the success, or sorry, I don't want to put it that way. You cannot separate the condition of a Masonic lodge from the condition of the country, city, or community in which it's located. Um, and so, you know, whether a country is or is not going to war, whether a country is or is not economically doing well, what's happening in a community, whether, for example, there are jobs coming or going from that community, all of that stuff is going to matter hugely when it comes to um, the success of the Masonic Lodge or the condition of the Masonic Lodge. And so it's important that we pay attention to what's happening in the world. We can't pretend like our Masonic lodges are not affected by the news cycle, because they are. It does for sure, James Patterson. So most lodges do not look up to a supreme being, GUI, because a lodge does not have I mean, a lodge is not a person. It cannot look up to anything. Masons look up to personal supreme beings as they understand it, based on their religious or spiritual beliefs. Yes, James Patterson, but James Patterson, I'm gonna kind of modify what you're saying in that it's not just that the lodge will be dramatically different, rather, the health and the growth of the lodge will be dramatically different. So, for example, if that small logging town suddenly gets an influx of, let's say, a new paper company or a new mill comes to town and suddenly an extra 500 to 5,000 jobs are created in that small logging town, the health of the Masonic Lodge in that town may suddenly grow quite substantially. They may get new members as new people come to the town. They may be able to raise dues for the first time in forever because there's now more work to go around. They may be able to, oftentimes when a new business comes in, the city will offer grants to beautify the town. They may be able to get some of those grants. And by the same token, in Seattle, the big city, if all of a sudden, let's say there's some type of economic crisis in the city or there's a political crisis, the health of that lodge may start to decline. So even though it may still be a case that Seattle has more members in the small logging town, if in 1 year the number of members in Seattle Lodge drops by 20% and the number of members in the small logging town increases by 20%, the relative health and growth is what's more important than just raw numbers. Yes, James, and the socioeconomics matter. By the way, thank you, James, for being here. Sojourner, welcome. Thank you for being here. Um, well, I mean, when it comes to, again, we have a lot of discussion about religion in the stream. I'm not religious, so I'm the worst person. I'm not a theologian either, but I do find this stuff interesting. By the way, today's topic is going to be actually about King Solomon. I did find an interesting article I wanted to read about it. So, I mean, what I would say is people themselves have different interpretations of the Bible, of Jesus, and it's not my place to say. Again, Freemasonry is not a religion. Um, Thank you, raised eyebrow. I hope you're doing well. Um, I hope life is treating you good. I know that you have your EA coming up soon. If I recall correctly, I wish you best of luck. Let us know how it's going. Um, Well, I shouldn't be anybody's hero, but thank you nonetheless. I appreciate it. That's a big problem, KY, and that's not exclusive to Freemasonry, by the way. A lot of people join a lot of different groups and clubs, and then for whatever reason choose to quit attending. I know a lot of different Masonic lodges are trying to figure out why that is and how to solve it. Um, I don't know if I have the best answers. Part of it is a matter of better guarding of the West Gate, making sure that people who are joining for the right reasons, have the right interests. That is absolutely one of the cases. But also, it is a leap of faith. Again, I've talked about this in the past, how joining Freemasonry is a leap of faith, and it absolutely is. But it's a leap of faith on both sides. It's a leap of faith for the person joining, and it's a leap of faith for the lodge admitting the new person. It doesn't always work out. No, JG, that is not true. No, it does not look like that at all. I don't know what your question was. Oh, our free? No, I mean, so the Illuminati started in 1777, about 75 years, 70 years. I can do math in my head. 50 years after the Grand Lodge of England formed. It was started by an ex-Freemason who did not like Freemasonry. He thought it was too expensive and not esoteric enough. Adam Weishaupt. The KKK, unfortunately, there were members like a Nathaniel Bedford Forrest, who was both a Freemason and a KKK member. However, ultimately, Freemasonry is about universal tolerance and respect. The KKK is about something else. So they're different groups, different organizations, right? Freemasonry, I believe, takes the human desire to belong to something and channels it towards positive ends, whereas the KKK takes that same human desire and human need and channels it towards negative ends. Simpsons episode is great. I love the Simpsons episode. Basic, you'd have to ask each Freemason. There is no single quote unquote Masonic belief. To be a Freemason, you must believe in a supreme being, but you can have a Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, French Freemason, right? Sorry, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist. You can have indigenous, all of whom will have different beliefs. You can have spiritual Freemason people who believe in a supreme being more in a spiritual sense, but don't have a specific religion. You can also have Masons of different, languages, regions, ethnicities from different countries. You can have them from France, from Spain, from England. There is no singular Masonic belief. What I would say is to be a Freemason, you probably do have certain beliefs that draw you to Freemasonry. For example, you're more likely to believe in tolerance of different opinions, different religions, different political beliefs. You're more likely to be civic or community minded. You're more likely than not to believe in charity or giving of your time. But those aren't beliefs in the sense of a religious belief. Freemasonry is not a religion. Hello, the game. Thank you for being here. Um, it's not easy, KY. I mean, and look, it'd be worth talking about and exploring more. I can't really give a good answer as to why that happens. I don't think anybody's figured out for sure. Um, my assumption is you are spending enough time with the candidates beforehand to get to know them, but might be worth trying to spend some more time with them. Maybe if your current, let's say the current average time between when a potential applicant first makes contact with the lodge through to when he is initiated, if it is, let's say, um, if the normal time frame is 7 months, try to extend it to 9 months. See if that helps. Uh, I mean, I don't worry about it, FA, because Well, I've known Buddhist Freemasons, so they must believe in something. Um, FA, when it comes to the 33rd degree, I never worry about it that much because, again, what matters within Freemasonry is the first three degrees. If there is no first three degrees within Freemasonry, Freemasonry would cease to exist. You could remove the 33rd degree from Freemasonry and it would not change the, for 99.9% of Freemasons, Freemasonry would stay exactly the same. That would also be for every York Rite Mason, every Mason who went up to 32nd degree. You cannot define Freemasonry based on a single degree, certainly not the 33rd degree. Um, well, I mean, that's a different thing, KY, from when you become an EA to MM. I'm saying the length of time from when the applicant first, when the applicant first knocks on the door of the lodge and expresses an interest to when he becomes an EA. What is that time frame like? Um, well, I mean, FA again, based on my experience, based on my observations, based on my attending all the meetings, based on my sitting with and being part of Scottish Rite events, including events led by 33rd degrees, and based on sitting in lodges with 33rd degree Masons, including knowing several who were actually members, or actually knowing one who was a member of and pastor at his church. Because the problem is, even if I joined the 33rd degree, right, FA, someone could say, well, how are you confident you took the real 33rd degree? What if there's another secret 33rd degree that you need to be invited to? Um, and then if I get, like there's always another rank, always another way up. At a certain point, I have to use my common sense, observations, and reason to make these assertions. So maybe it's worth going from 4 to 5 months to 10 months. I know a lot of the lodges are probably anxious to get people through, but if it takes a little bit longer, maybe they'll be more inclined to want to stick around because they gave such, if not sweat equity, then time equity into the process. I mean, I can't speak to what Buddhists believe, but I can say I've known Buddhist Freemasons. So maybe their supreme being would be best understood as not themselves, but the nature of like nature. Because I think that was a Buddhist teaching, right? It's like kind of like Stoicism. The way to be happy is to live in accordance with nature. We are not connected to the Illuminati. The Illuminati doesn't really exist anymore, anyways. Well, I hope that you will be brainwashed into hitting the like and subscribe button. I was at the United Grand Lodge of England last year. I was going to say this year, last year in November. It was really fun and beautiful. Beautiful building. I had a cappuccino in the Goose and Gridiron. So that was really, really cool as well. Hello, I like Carstone. Freemasons are not connected to the Illuminati. To my knowledge, the Illuminati doesn't exist. Well, I mean, some dude, American lodges primarily are Preston Webb or York Rite ritual. Um, England lodges, including those in Canada, are primarily emulation ritual. So there are differences, but there are differences between my lodges in Ontario and lodges 30 minutes away in Michigan. Doesn't change the fact that we're all brothers. And I'm grateful that I got to visit. Sorry, there's no code word. Don't do anything that would cause you to be pulled over, and you'll be okay. Let's see. Interesting enough, social media sites on which you spend the most time. YouTube is 62%. So I guess that would make sense, seeing as how I'm on here right now, and so obviously that poll is going to be skewed toward YouTube. What's interesting though is um, Um, my assumption was Instagram would actually be higher up, but X is in second place at 16%, then Instagram, then Facebook is at the lowest. So good. I'm glad. Well, first of all, to the members of your lodge, and the mentors in your lodge, that is awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Tell them they're doing a good job and make sure you don't forget it because eventually you'll be called upon to be a mentor. So don't forget how valuable their mentorship was to you. And by the same token, you should, um, you should pay that forward and don't forget what it meant. Um, oh, the London Lodge is incredible and it's beautiful. Some dude, I posted a lot of pictures on Instagram. Follow, please follow me on Instagram. You will learn. You will see pictures of the Grand Lodge of London, the Premier Grand Lodge of London. Sorry, United Grand Lodge of England in London. Excuse me. It's a beautiful building, beautiful spot. FA, I don't really have a take on the current Iranian situation. Rather, I was talking about the history of Freemasonry in Iran, which is fascinating. What was so fascinating about the history of Freemasonry in Iran was how focused it is, or how focused it was on diplomacy and politics. Many Iranian leaders, ambassadors, political figures actually joined Freemasonry in Europe, then brought it to Persia, then Iran, really as for better or worse, it became kind of a club for politicians and ambassadors for both Persia and the countries to which they were being ambassadors or envoys or dignitaries. So it's fascinating. We in Freemasonry tend not to think about Freemasonry as being political, and it's not, certainly in 2025. But there was a time when it was much more common for political figures to be part of Freemasonry. And in some cases, there's evidence that they joined specifically to make political contact with other countries. It was fascinating. Well, for the record, um, I'm cheering for the Bears, Crowley, so go Bears. Um, what's wrong with my hair? Error is asking what happened to my hair. Does my hair look ugly? I don't think my hair looks that bad. Other than it's grown, I need to get it cut again. If anybody thinks my hair is ugly, let me know. No, gotta go with the Bears. Gotta go with the Bears. All right. So yeah, follow me on. By the way, I have a Facebook, I have an Twitter, I have an Instagram, I have a Blue Sky, by the way. So follow me there as well. It'd be much, much appreciated. All right, we're gonna give this, let's say 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna start talking about um, King Solomon. Again, was it the question as to whether he was real or not, did he exist or not? We don't know for sure, but there is a very interesting article that I found. I figured I'd read that. So it's from October 2017, and I'll be sharing the information in the description to this video. No, Lord, I have not. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Okay. Actually, I'm going to ask that as a poll question. I'm going to end this poll. Did King Okay. So, first person, did the kingdoms, this is from the article, did the kingdoms of Saul, David, and Solomon actually exist? Amihai Mizar is a highly regarded archaeologist, recently retired from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Long ago, he was on the cover of Bar, which is an article along with his famous uncle, Benjamin Mizar, a former president of Hebrew University and a famous archaeologist. Um, So this person conclusion was quite nuanced. He adhered to the moderate view, which, in spite of considerable variations and degrees of confidence, agree that the biblical authors worked with ancient sources, including oral and written narratives, transmitted poetry, archival documents, public inscriptions, etc. Um, the biblical narratives retain memories of realities rooted in that century. Let us begin by considering the famous passage in 1 Kings. By the way, I do not know the proper way to cite biblical verses. So if I'm getting this incorrectly, I apologize, or if citing these incorrectly, I apologize. Um, hey, I love the Bears, Pikachu. Or I love Chicago, so by default, I love the Bears. Let's begin by considering the famous passage in 1 Kings chapter 9, verses 15 through 19, which tells us that King Solomon forded Hazer, Megiddo, and Gezer. The great Israeli archaeologist Yadin long ago attributed 3 impressive 6-chambered city gates at these 3 major sites to the time of Solomon. For a long time, this dating was considered secure. Then, Israeli Frankenstein of Tel Aviv University came along with his low chronology, according to which he extends the time of the relevant archaeological period, the Iron Age, by 80 to 100 years or so, long after King Solomon's time. Thus, he dates these gates to a later time in the Iron Age, initially about 100 years later, probably to the time of King Ahab. Here it is. Hold on just one sec. I gotta pull up this article again. I just lost it. So, Solomon was a biblical Israelite king who built the first temple of Jerusalem and who was revered in Judaism and Christianity for his wisdom and in Islam as a prophet. Nearly all evidence for Solomon's life and reign comes from the Bible, especially the first 11 chapters of the first book of Kings and the first 9 chapters of the second book of Chronicles. According to these sources, his father was David, who flourished around 1000 BC, the poet and king who, against great odds, founded the Judean dynasty and united all the tribes of Israel under one monarch. Solomon's mother was Bathsheba, formerly the wife of David's Hittite general. She proved to be adept at court intrigue, and through her efforts in concert with the prophet Nathan, Solomon was anointed king while David was still alive, despite the fact that he was younger than his brothers. Material evidence for Solomon's reign, as for that of his father, is scant, although some scholars claim to have discovered artifacts that corroborate the biblical account of his reign in the early 10th century BC. Others claim that the archaeological record strongly suggests that the fortified cities and even the Temple of Jerusalem actually emerged more than a century later. In the later view, the kingdom of Solomon was far from the vast empire that the biblical narratives describe. The Bible says Solomon consolidated his position by liquidating his opponents ruthlessly as soon as he acceded to his throne. Um, but King Solomon, we got hearts. I think that might be smoky. Once rid of his foes, he established his friends in the key posts of the military, governmental, and religious institutions. Solomon also reinforced his position through military strength. In addition to infantry, he had at his disposal impressive chariotry and cavalry. The 8th chapter of 2 Chronicles recounts Solomon's successful military operations in Syria. His aim was the control of a great overland trading route. To consolidate his interests in the province, he planted Israelite colonies to look after military, administrative, and commercial matters. Such colonies, often including cities in which chariots and provisions were kept, were in the long tradition of combining mercantile and military personnel to take care of their sovereigns' trading interests far from home. Megiddo, a town located in the pass through the Carmel Range, connecting the coast with the plains of Esdraelon, is the best preserved example of one of the cities that Solomon is said to have established. Jeremy DeLorean, but King Solomon, I don't see enough evidence of the version. My suspicion is it might have been a myth as well, right? Palestine was destined to be an important center because of its strategic location for trade by land and sea. It alone connects Asia and Africa by land, and along with Egypt, it is the only area with ports on the Atlantic, Mediterranean, and Red Sea/Indian Ocean waterways. Solomon is said to have fulfilled the commercial destiny of Palestine and brought it to its greatest heights. The nature of his empire was predominantly commercial, and it served him and friendly rulers to increase trade by land and sea. One particularly celebrated episode in the reign of Solomon is the visit of the Queen of Sheba, whose wealthy southern Arabian kingdom lay along the Red Sea route to the Indian Ocean. Solomon needed her products and her trade routes for maintaining his, probably for another 45 minutes or so, Fa. Although I would not describe it as theology, I would say mythology or history. Lay along the Red Sea route into the Indian Ocean. Solomon needed her products and trade routes for maintaining his commercial network, and she needed Solomon's cooperation for marketing her goods in the Mediterranean via his Palestinian ports. Biblical legend makes much of a romance between the queen and Solomon, and his granting her all she desired, whatever she asks, has been interpreted to include a child. Tradition recognizes Solomon as an ambitious builder of public works. The demand for fortresses and garrison cities throughout his homeland and empire made it necessary for Solomon to embark on a vast building program, and the prosperity of the nation made such a program possible. He was especially lavish with his capital, Jerusalem, where he erected a city wall, the royal palace, and the first famous temple. Around Jerusalem, but not in the holy city itself, he built facilities including shrines for the main group of foreigners on trading missions in Israel. No worries. Enjoy the birthday. Thank you for being here, KY. Around Jerusalem, but not in the holy city himself, he built facilities including shrines for the main groups of foreigners on trading missions in Israel. Solomon's temple was to assume an importance far beyond what its dimensions might suggest, for its site became the site of the second temple. Solomon was renowned as a sage. When two women each claimed to be the mother of the same baby, he determined the real mother by observing each woman's reaction to the prospect of dividing the child in two halves. He acknowledged the woman who protested as the mother. Solomon was deemed wiser than all the sages of Egypt and the Middle East, even wiser than some ancient paragons of wisdom. The biblical book of Proverbs contains collections of aphorisms and other wise teachings attributed to him. Like his father, Solomon was also revered as a poet. The biblical Song of Solomon is attributed to him, albeit spuriously and likely because of his posthumous fame. in the opening verse. His reputation as a great lover, reflected in the size of his harem, is appropriately a major theme of the Song of Solomon. Post-biblical tradition attributed later works to him, the apocryphal Wisdom of Solomon on the one hand, and the Odes of Solomon on the other. The biblical account of his reign states that Solomon's personal prestige and genius were required to perpetuate the powerful nation he had acquired from his father and then further strengthened. It is suspected that the increase in Israel's wealth was matched by an increase in extravagance and that the wealth was not diffused to the people. It is also considered possible that Solomon's treatment of the northern tribes showed favoritism to his own tribe of Judah. Solomon's son and successor, Rehoboam, ill-advisedly adopted a harsh policy toward the northern tribes, which seceded and formed their own kingdom of Israel. This left the descendants of Solomon with the southern kingdom of Judah. Thus, Solomon's empire was lost beyond recall, and even the homeland was split into two often hostile kingdoms. So JG, this is not Bible study, although this is the study of King Solomon, more particularly asking the question, was King Solomon real or not? We know, for example, his importance within the Bible. I do want to go over his history, at least biblically speaking. We do want to ask the question now, based on that, do we think he was literally a historical figure or a mythological figure? The Guardian has a very interesting article about this, right? It asks, was King Solomon of the ancient... oops. Right. This is an article that is approximately 4 years old. Was King Solomon the ancient world's first shipping magnate? King Solomon is venerated in Judaism and Christianity for his wisdom and in Islam as a prophet, but the fabled ruler is one of the Bible's great unsolved mysteries. Archaeologists have struggled in vain to find conclusive proof that he actually existed. With no inscriptions or remnants of the magnificent palace and temple he is supposed to have built in Jerusalem 3,000 years ago, the Israelite king has sunk into the realm of myth. Well, because Solomon is an important figure within Freemasonry. When Freemasonry was developing its rituals and ceremonies, it borrowed from a variety of philosophies, religions, theories, trades, unions, building approaches. And, one of the areas from which it borrowed was King Solomon. King Solomon became an important symbolical figure within Freemasonry. Whether he actually existed or not, I guess every Mason decides for themselves. But from a philosophical perspective, he was considered and is considered an important Masonic symbol. There's many important Masonic symbols. Many of them come from architecture and architectural study. Many of them come from stone masonry and stone Masonic guilds. Many of them come from Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Stoic philosophy, Egyptian mysticism. But today we're talking about King Solomon. Well, within Freemasonry, primarily, and the most important thing that he is known for or symbolizes is his temple, right? When you think about it, Freemasonry, we evolved from stone masons and stone Masonic guilds. So as a consequence, any famous examples of buildings constructed with stone or constructed with masons is going to be considered incredibly important. One such example are the pyramids in Egypt, which is an important symbol within Freemasonry very often, or Egypt in general kind of became an important symbol within Freemasonry. However, King Solomon's Temple is another one. Also, his wisdom. Again, when they were developing these rituals and ceremonies, they used King Solomon to kind of demonstrate wisdom. Again, because a lot of the, if you want to call them founders, the developers of Masonic ritual, when they were looking for ways to illuminate certain valuable lessons or insights, they would have been aware of biblical stories just because in the 17th, 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, those were some of the stories a lot of people would likely know and a lot of symbols people would likely understand. Now, so going back to this, now British marine archaeologist Dr. Sean Kingsley and the leader of the lodge is very often considered to be kind of a substitute for King Solomon. Um, yeah, or I wouldn't say king, I mean wise ruler, which another term for king, right? Because king can be both a pejorative term, like a dictator, or a more positive term, more an offshoot of the wise ruler archetype. I have no idea what that flag is. I'm going to guess Ghana. Archaeologists have struggled in vain to find conclusive proof that he actually existed, King Solomon, with no inscriptions or remnants of the magnificent palace and temple he is supposed to have built in Jerusalem 3,000 years ago. The Israelite king has sunk into the realm of myth. Now, British marine archaeologist Dr. Sean Kingsley has amassed evidence showing that Solomon was not just a flesh and blood monarch, but also the world's first shipping magnate who funded voyages carried out by his Phoenician allies in history's first special relationship. Over 10 years, Kingsley has carried out a maritime audit of the Solomon question by extending the search beyond the Holy Land across the Mediterranean to Spain and Sardinia. He found that archaeological evidence supports biblical descriptions of a partnership between Solomon, who excelled all the things of the earth in riches and in wisdom, and the Phoenician king Hiram, who supplied Solomon with cedar, timber and gold as much as he desired, and stone as well. Kingsley told the Observer, "I've spread a very wide net. That kind of maritime study had never been done before." He said, "For 100 years, archaeologists have scrutinized Jerusalem's holy soils, the most excavated city in the world. Nothing definitive fits the Book of Kings and Chronicles' epic accounts of Solomon's palace and temple. By exploring traces of ports, warehouses, industry, and shipwrecks, new evidence shakes up the quest for truth." He explored Andulasian port towns from Mezcatila to Malacca and found that the archaeological evidence reveals a Phoenician coast. He visited the site of a great mine in the ancient world, Rio Tinto, 70 kilometers inland from Huelva, which produces gold, silver, lead, copper, and zinc, and where crucially he realized that old maps and historical accounts referred to a particular spot as Cerro Solomon or Solomon's Hill. Over 17th century accounts note that Solomon's Hill was previously called Solomon's Castle, and another describes people being sent there by King Solomon for gold and silver. At the site, archaeologists have found ancient mining tools such as granite pestles and stone mortars used to crush minerals and remnants of lead slag that held a high proportion of silver. Kingsley said that lead isotope analysis has shown that silver hoards excavated in Israel originally came from Iberia. Recent digs in nearby Huelva have found evidence of the Israelites and Phoenicians, including elephant tusks, merchants, shekel weights, and pottery. The Near Eastern link can be dated as far back as 930 BC, the end of Solomon's reign, and Kingsley has concluded that Huelva is the best fit for the capital of the biblical Tarshish, the ancient source of imported metals, which archaeologists have signposted wildly, everywhere from southern Israel to the Red Sea, Ethiopia to Tunisia. He was struck by texts and ruins that support a far more conclusive candidate in this area of the southern Iberian Peninsula, which was known in antiquity as Tartessos, a Greek derivation of Tarshish. Phoenician script on 9th century BC stele found in Sardinia refers to the land of Tarshish, also proving its historical reality. right? Kingsley, who explored more than 350 shipwrecks in the past 30 years, published his research in the spring issue of Wreck Watch magazine, a free journal for maritime archaeology. Solomon is believed to have built the first temple in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. Kingsley writes that everything historians know about it comes from the Bible, including details such as its inner sanctum lined with pure gold. Building cities, palaces, and a flagship temple didn't come cheap. Long-distance voyages to the lands of Ophir and Tarshish brought a river of gold, silver, precious stones, and marble to the royal court. Neither Israel nor Lebanon could tap into local gold and silver resources. The biblical entrepreneurs were forced to look to the horizon. The land of Tarshish was a vital source for Solomon's silver. As the book of Ezekiel recorded, Tarshish did business with you because of your great wealth of goods. Kingsley added, what turned up in southern Spain is undeniable. Phoenician signature finds richly strewed from Rio Tinto to Malaga leave no doubt that Near Eastern ships voyaged to what must have seemed the far side of the moon by 900 BC. When I spotted the ancient accounts in the name of the hill where silver was mined, Solomon's Hill, I was stunned. Biblical history, archaeology, and myth emerged to reveal the long-sought land of Tarshish celebrated in the Old Testament. It looks like Solomon was wise in his maritime planning. He bankrolled the voyages from Jerusalem to let salty Phoenician sailors take all the risks at sea. So again, this is not proof that Solomon existed, at least the Solomon as discussed within the Bible, specifically within let me just get the correct books. Again, the Solomon as referenced within the Bible, 1 Kings and 2, so 1 and 2 Kings, 1 and 2 Chronicles, as well as Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. While we don't know for sure that he existed, I guess recent archaeological evidence indicates significant maritime trading between what would have been King Solomon's temple and lands throughout the Mediterranean, including the biblical Tarshish. This trade was to bring in metals, specifically gold and silver, as well as lead, to what again would have been Jerusalem and King Solomon's temple to be used for the building of King Solomon's temple. So there you go. Right, there's an article from 2023 in Haaretz. David and Solomon's biblical kingdom may have existed after all. This was from 2023. Monumental structures have been redated to the early 10th century BC, which means maybe Solomon built them after all. Biblical archaeologists say. Colleagues remain skeptical. Remains of the gates, defensive walls, and large administrative buildings at Gezer date to the early 10th century BC, putting them in the right time frame to have been built by King Solomon, just as the Bible claims. The radiocarbon study of the 3,000-year-old ruins, an ancient site in Israel, was published Wednesday in the journal +1 and claims to introduce new evidence in the long-standing debate on how much of the Bible is a true story. Particularly, the work relates to the historicity and of the fabled kingdom of David and Solomon. The study does not purport to prove that the united monarchy of the Israelites described in the Bible was historical reality, but it shows that the kingdom's existence and involvement in major construction cannot be ruled out. Much research in the last 4 decades has shown that the ancient remains scattered around Israel, once attributed to David and Solomon, were in fact, again, David was Solomon's father, were in fact dated to about a century after the supposed time of the reign, meaning there is no concrete evidence supporting the historicity of their kingdom. However, some archaeologists have pushed back against this paradigm, unearthing in recent years impressive 10th century remains at different sites, particularly in central and southern Israel, and averring that these may be evidence that David and Solomon's kingdom did exist after all. Um, so I think the most clear thing that we can see, for sure, we got Hart, Smokey the Clown, doing well. I think the most clear thing that we can see is the primary, James, the primary evidence for the existence of King Solomon is still biblical sources. There is archaeological evidence of a potential kingdom at the same time as what would have been King Solomon and his father David's empire. However, that does not, I think, as of yet confirm that King Solomon himself existed. Or I don't know if there's any specific evidence of the first temple, at least archaeologically. Not to say it didn't exist, but I guess there's not been any direct archaeological evidence found confirming it does exist. It does appear that there was significant maritime shipping to Israel and to Jerusalem, again, in the time of what would have been King Solomon, including several precious metals, silver, gold, and lead. Whether that was used for the temple or for other works, we don't know. Well, let me know though, James, what you think when you read Samuel in the Bible, or when the sections you read. Let me know why you think Solomon and Hiram were real characters from history as opposed to mythological figures. By the way, even if they were mythological, I don't believe that just because a figure is mythological, we cannot learn something from them. The wisdom of Solomon, whether he was real or not, I think can be a guiding post, a guiding light to help us in our day-to-day lives, without question. Nice. Enjoy your smoke break. I'm glad that you're feeling better. At least it sounds like you're feeling better. So I know you had that, you were sick for a few days, a couple weeks ago. Keep feeling better. So interesting enough, 20 votes. Was King Solomon real? Yes is in the lead. 14-6, it looks like. Well, keep up the good work. Keep getting over it. So James, I don't think there's ever been any confirmation of archaeological evidence for King Solomon's temple. At least not I've read. So Jason, I'm not sure I understand your question. I mean, like hated by. So when I said that Freemasonry was a big group, um, in the case of, for example, like the Catholic Church disapproving of Freemasonry, I mentioned Mason's size and its growth because I think the size of it and the growth of it, the Catholic Church did not like that because, you had Masons growing in numbers while the Catholic Church, I think, was declining. If you're trying to create a conspiracy theory about a group that is quote unquote, controlling the world, numbers are going to matter in terms of how plausible your conspiracy theory seems, right? So, your aunt's knitting group that has 10 members in it, it's going to be very hard to convince people that there's any type of conspiracies or, taking over the world or anything like that when the numbers are so low. But when you have a group that is growing and has significant numbers, it's easier to make that conspiracy theory and make it seem plausible. And again, it doesn't have to be millions upon millions upon millions, but if in America you have 4 million Masons, which is approximately the number in 1959, it's easier to create some conspiracy theories around that than, say, um, a group with 20 people in it. Um, but the other, I mean, Jewish people are not opposite to Freemasonry. I mean, because it's kind of like saying uh, cheese is opposite to like water. Like it's different. They're different things. They occupy different spaces, right? Judaism is either, you could look at it as ethnicity, you could look at it as a religion. It occupies those spaces. Freemasonry occupies civic or community space. Freemasonry did run in parallel with or borrow some ideas and philosophies from Judaism, but it also borrowed ideas and philosophies from a lot of different um, religions, philosophies, histories, whether it be Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Enlightenment era philosophy, Egyptian mysticism, Stoic philosophy. Primarily, what it borrowed from, or adopted, or evolved from was stone masonry and stone Masonic symbols. But I mean, it's not opposite to. They're different things that occupy different spaces. However, I mean, whenever you are trying to create a conspiracy theory and trying to get people to hate something else, whether it be a group like the Freemasons or a religion and ethnicity like Jewish people, the more of them there are, the easier it is to kind of create these conspiracies surrounding them. Um, I think it depends on how you define big groups. Certainly, there are more Jewish people than Freemasons, right? Like, probably there's always been more. I mean, I think it's not big or small relative to, like, it's big or small relative to other groups, right? Not big or small in the grand scheme of things. So, for example, if I were trying to say that the tenants of my building are engaged in a plot to take over the world. There are, I don't know how many people live in my building, let's say 1,000. Nobody's gonna, well, some people might believe that because everybody's crazy, but most people are going to say there's 1,000 people in your building. They cannot be trying to take over the world. That's crazy. But if I say this group that has 4 million people in it is trying to take over the world, it seems more plausible. And really, that could be from 4 million to a group of ethnicity that, let's say, has 15 million in it to, once you reach a number, a sufficient number, the plausibility for conspiracy theories just goes up. And at that point, whether it's 4 million or 10 million or 15 million, it doesn't really make a difference, right? It's just there's a base number. I don't know what it is, where if you are conspiracy minded, it will seem possible to you that that group is trying to take over the world, especially if you are struggling in your life and looking for some type of group, to pit yourself against as a way to make yourself feel like you're saving the world. No, I mean at its height, I mean at its height, maybe. So in 1959, there was over 4 million Freemasons in the United States. I if there were ever more than 10 million, um, right? If there were ever more than 10 million Freemasons around the world, I would smile and kiss a pig. My estimate would be probably at its height around 5 million, maybe. So yeah, there's always been more Jewish people than Freemasons because Freemasonry, um, again, it's a civic or community group. Like right now, if I ask Google, there are an estimated 6 million Freemasons worldwide. Um, so that's what Google AI says. My opinion is between 5 and 10 million at most Freemasons. I mean, I have no issue with the French. I think the French are wonderful people. I know many French Freemasons. Freemasonry in France has been very popular. Nobody, and that's a big problem, Effie. There are no official numbers of Freemasons, and so that makes it very hard to determine accurately how many Masons exist. Um, I know, like, I know how many Masons exist within my lodge, and because I'm a worshipful master, I can find out how many Masons exist within Ontario. But Freemasonry, right? Keep in mind, Freemasonry is decentralized. And there's benefits and drawbacks. One of the drawbacks is it's very hard to get accurate numbers because Ontario will keep accurate numbers of Freemasons in Ontario. It's not going to have numbers of Freemasons in Texas or in New York or in England or wherever it is. You would have to get somebody to gather all of that information of the number of Masons from each jurisdiction, which would be even just regular lodges. I don't even know how many jurisdictions. 51 in the States, 10 in Canada, a whole bunch overseas. Gather them all, and then you have to assume each lodge is keeping up to date with their numbers. It's very possible that lodges will miscount how many Masons they actually have, especially if a brother, and can happen, it happens in other groups, not just Freemasonry. No, Freemasonry did not start in France. Freemasonry started in Scotland or England. Um, this happens in other groups I've been part of, but a member passes away. The secretary forgets to make a note recording that member is deceased. And even though he's passed away, he's still listed as a member for years and years. And then what do you count clandestine? So it's really hard to get an accurate number of how many Masons exist in the world. It's really just an estimate, and you base that on, what you can do is you can pull from different articles, because sometimes, for example, a Masonic lodge or Grandmaster will do a interview with the newspaper and will say, we have this many Masons in this jurisdiction, and you kind of just guesstimate. But it's hard. It's not easy. Um, well, there is a list, Jason, but you don't need to attend to be a member. What you need to be doing is paying your dues regularly. But you can be a member, and let's say you're a member of a lodge, but you move away, so you no longer live in the area. You may still choose to remain as a member just because you want to support the lodge, or you just like having a membership there, but you aren't able to attend meetings. And again, if the secretary's busy, he's got his own life, his own family, his own work commitments, he may forget to make a note saying that the brother passed away. And then he's still listed as being a member of the lodge. And so then if you were to go to, the Grand Lodge and say, how many members does such and such a lodge have? All they will see is the final number and the names. They won't realize this brother's deceased, but was not mentioned. Well, even clandestine, how do you define clandestine? Is Google counting clandestine? The point is, I have no idea how many Masons are in the world. Between 5 and 10 million, but there are less Freemasons than Jewish people. Gonna have to be more specific. What do you mean by sexism within Freemasonry? Um, Like Freemasonry is a fraternity. Well, it's not exclusively a fraternity. Freemasonry, the largest section of it is fraternal, which means it's male exclusive. However, there is the Order of Women Freemasons, which are an excellent Masonic group for women exclusively. There's also Eastern Star, which is for men and women. There's also Rainbow, which is for young women. Um, Do Masons tip their fedoras to each other? I've never heard of that. In the States, if you're the worshipful master of a lodge, you wear a hat, which is kind of a cool little tradition. Um, but I've never heard of this tipping of the fedora situation. Eyes Wide Shut does not show what we really do. The meetings would be more fun if that's what we really did, but that is not what we really do. I mean, FA, I would say Freemasonry, in terms of fraternal or social organizations, is the highest, is the top in terms of membership and numbers. There have been many that have grown, though. I mean, uh, uh, Moose, Elk, Knights of Columbus, um, Rotary, um, all these different groups kind of grew and developed. Some grew very big, some kind of less. So it just depends on a lot of different factors. Well, I mean, there are some lodges that will do after a meeting is finished a tip, a pass the hat. Usually it's not a hat. Usually it's a basket of some sort where you can put a couple bucks in and that goes to a fund for charitable giving. So yeah, that can happen. I've never heard of the hat thing though. I don't think if I've ever even seen it be a hat. Not to my knowledge. It's always it's almost always a basket. There's also what's called a broken column, where sometimes they'll have a column at the entrance to the lodge, which has a basket on it, and again, you can put in a couple of bucks for charitable giving. The money goes to different charities, maybe picked by the lodge, maybe picked by the worshipful master. We're going to give it a bit more time. We're going to wait to see who joins. Please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button if you're new to this stream. I hope you enjoyed the information about King Solomon. Again, when it comes to King Solomon, whether he existed or not, the primary evidence is the Bible. Um, I think in a lot of cases, there's archaeological evidence, but it's not clear, it's not conclusive. Everybody kind of has to come to their own conclusion, which is the same thing as with Freemasonry, right? Everybody kind of based on what they see will have their own interpretations of Freemasonry, um, and what they think of it. Oh, Reddit. Never pay attention to Reddit. Reddit is crazy. There's so much crazy stuff on Reddit. Um, but I've never seen the fedora tipping thing. It's a great word. All right, let's give it a bit more time. Let's wait. Reddit is a weird place. I've been on Reddit. It's an interesting spot, that's for sure. We're going to give it a bit more time. We're going to wait to see who else joins. As always, please take a moment, hit that like and subscribe button. Freemasonry is not tied to communism. Communism is a political ideology. Um, and Freemasonry um, is not political, it occupies a different space. Who are public people I respect? John Cena, I'm a huge fan of. Um, I would say he's maybe number one in terms of celebrities that I respect. I think he's done a lot of incredible things for the community. I've been enjoying some different YouTubers' work in terms of Freemasonry. The first Three Knocks is a great podcast. So there's been a few different ones that I've really been enjoying lately. But I'd say top one would be John Cena. We do not worship Baal nor Baphomet. Freemasonry is not a religion. So again, we do not worship any figures, be they Baal, Baphomet, or anything else. Well, John Cena is pretty awesome. So good for you. Uh, he really was the GOAT for the last like 10 years. It's crazy to think of not just his career, but the absolute unbelievable staying power, the length of it, how long he was on top, and how much of himself he gave to being a professional wrestler. Well, I mean, it's not a sandwich. What I'll say is Freemasonry does not discriminate. I've been in lodge with, four or five, I think, something like that, gay Freemasons. They're my brothers as much as anybody else. So why do you say King Solomon definitely existed? Not even like on a balance of probabilities, but definitely. What makes you say that? I could say, I would say I think he probably existed, but I don't know if I'd say um, whether or not the question of definitely, I'm not sure about that. No worries, Jason. Thank you for being here. Well, so the accounting of religious text, I mean, obviously, most of the evidence is from the Bible. Where is the evidence of his throne? Because um, I've never heard of the. I know there's archaeological evidence, but it's unclear at this point. Like I said, there is evidence of. I'm trying to think what the word is now. Like maritime shipping from then Jerusalem around the Mediterranean, specifically precious metals coming from Tarshish and other cities in Phoenicia around the Mediterranean from there to Jerusalem, indicating that at that time there was significant maritime trade happening. Almost like Jerusalem was like a shipping center, and that would follow as it relates to Solomon needing materials and men for that matter, but materials for King Solomon's temple. Um, oh my God, this guy is back. Well, Nephilims, those are giants, right? Um, I definitely don't believe in giants. But again, I think, the historical accuracy of Solomon, I think it's valuable to think about and consider because he is an important part of being a Freemason, his wisdom and his knowledge and his temple. But I think whether he existed or not, the lessons and metaphors and symbolism of him remains valuable. But I think it's worth asking the question whether he existed and learning more about, it's worth exploring these things in your mind. Dave, I have no idea, but this guy keeps popping on and saying I was exposed as Cal Franklin. So there you go. Well, you say that, but again, what evidence do we have of his temple other than maybe religious sources? Was there any archaeological findings of a temple of a throne that would be King Solomon's? Rod for now, no, I'm good because I don't think I need any mods at the moment. But if it becomes any type of issue, I promise I'll keep you in mind. Well, Iroquois Pilskin, please like and subscribe, by the way. I mean, yes, I think you can look at that Masonically. There is this idea that, stonemasons as a profession, they build things out of stone, including religious sites like temples, but also walls and houses and, whatever else needs to be built, shelters. Within Freemasonry, we are building ourselves, we are erecting ourselves metaphorically using lessons of geometry, lessons of stonemasons, lessons from a variety of philosophies, lessons from different religious understandings as well, different philosophies. We are taking all of these things and metaphorically, we are trying to build ourselves into better people and also build in some ways a temple metaphorically for the community, growing the temple that is our community into something better than it was. Um, we'll hit the like and subscribe button, Rod, and we'll see. So his temple is supposedly on Temple Mount. We know that from biblical sources, but again, I don't know if there's been any ever confirmed archaeological evidence that his temple found on the mount. Obviously, the second temple is well known, but the first one, which would be beneath that, do we know? Well, in that case, Rod, thank you. We'll see. For right now, I'm busy with my podcast, and this stream, so that's the most important thing to me at the moment. So it's tough. The point is, I'm not saying he did or didn't. I think modesty and a little bit of caution when making statements as to historical figures like Solomon and the Bible or any source is valuable, and that includes Masonic texts and Masonic documents like the Anderson Constitutions, the Regius Poem. I think, as a general rule, modesty is worth it. So I would never say I definitely or King Solomon definitely existed. What I would say is, in my opinion, on a balance of probabilities, King Solomon likely existed. Um, Iroquois. I've been a Freemason since 2007, so basically 20 years or almost 20 years, which is crazy to think it's been that long. Um, so Dave Daveson. So the Templars existed first. I used to know the dates and I forget, like 1100 something to 1300 something until Friday the 13th and the King of France, putting them all to death. Freemasonry started a few hundred years later. But when the Freemasons were developing rituals and ceremonies, including different rites and different appended bodies, they developed the York Rite and looked back at the Knights Templar as kind of, again, another metaphorical or symbolic, another group from which they could derive metaphorical or symbolic lessons, and from which, based on that, they could impart ideals about how best to live within the world. Um, do you sometimes have Freemason homework? I mean, sometimes. Now, again, we're all adults within Freemasonry, so we can do whatever work we want to or not want to. But certainly, if you have, let's say, a degree coming up and you need to memorize a part for that degree because there's memory work involved, you may memorize it at home. One of the examples I've given before is when I was growing up. So my dad was a Freemason, is a Freemason. Um, when I was growing up, I would, he worked days. So he'd wake up at like 6 in the morning and get breakfast and then leave for work around 7. He would walk to work. And I would, my apartment, my room was kind of off the kitchen. So I'd wake up and hear him, at 6:30 in the morning talking to himself at the kitchen table. Um, it was years later that I realized what he was doing was memorizing his Masonic ritual, getting ready for whatever it is he had to get ready for. Could be a degree, could be installation, could be a business meeting. But at the time, I just hear my dad talking to himself. Thought he was crazy. Of course, he is crazy as well, but that's another story. Um, so yeah, I mean, really, how much work you want to do within Freemasonry is really up to you. We are called upon to make a daily advancement in Masonic knowledge, but how many Masons do that on a daily basis is really, it's hit and miss. Installation is when the new officers step into lodge, or step into their offices. So once every year, so Freemasonry is democratic. Once every year, the lodge members will get together and they'll vote on the worshipful master and the officers of the lodge. And each office has different responsibilities. If you're the junior warden, you're responsible for, amongst other things, refreshment after lodge. If you're the senior warden, you're kind of the second in command. If you're the secretary, administrative work, whatever it might be. Um, and so, yeah, the installation usually is the month after, and that is when the lodge votes. That is when the lodge takes the officers elect, those officers that were elected by the lodge, and installs them in the chair. It's basically the start of the term. You could almost look at it in the same way as, the presidential inauguration, but for a lodge. It's the start of the term of office. It's also there's a lot of pomp and circumstance and ceremony around it, but it's really, really fun and enjoyable and is a really excellent way, I think, to for people to kind of reset and look to the future. It's a secret, FA. That reminds me of the joke, how many masons does it take to install how many masons does it take to change a light bulb? The answer being it's a secret. Um, you need, I mean, I suppose in theory, one mason could do the whole thing, but it's a very long ceremony. In my experience personally, you need at least 10 to do it well. Um, you can get away with seven, but it's a lot of work. So I would say you need at least 10. Uh, I don't ignore my supporters, but I get a lot of comments. I have to figure out which ones are best to respond to. It just depends what's happening and what I'm talking about. I hope you guys enjoyed me discussing King Solomon. There will absolutely be a test on this shortly. So, well, CO, Freemasonry is not a cult, no filter. I mean, I would push back a little bit. In my experience, Freemasonry does not get a bad or like within society in large, most people aren't thinking about Freemasonry enough for it to have a good rep or a bad rep. That's actually even true of Freemasons. Most of them on their day to day are not thinking about Freemasonry enough for it to have a good rep or a bad rep. Um, right? That's not kind of how it works. I think within certain subsections of the internet and of society, Freemasonry has a bad rep. Um, and CO, ultimately, I've talked about this before. I think when it comes down to that, within that section where it has a bad rep, it's for a lot of people, it's a codependent relationship with conspiracy. So what I mean by that is I saw this a lot when I worked as a probation officer. Um, when I was a probation officer and worked in a jail, a lot of times I'd have clients who themselves had substance abuse issues, to drugs, alcohol, or had other problems in their lives. And what they would do is they would oftentimes find themselves getting into relationships with somebody else who had either an equally bad or maybe in some ways even worse substance use issue. And you would think, why would they do that? Well, by doing that, what it meant is they had an excuse to avoid considering their own problems or their own issues. They could instead spend all their energy trying to fix their partner and as a consequence, not focus on themselves. I can't focus on my drinking, my issues at the moment. I'm trying to deal with my partner's problems. And it was both an excuse for them to not deal with their own problems while at the same time imagining themselves in some type of heroic role. Like, look at me sacrificing myself to help somebody else. Within Freemasonry, or when it gets a bad rep, what I've found is a lot of people who believe the conspiracy theories about Freemasonry or who really push them very often they themselves have not so good lives. They're struggling. It could be with substance use issues. They could have mental health issues, emotional issues, dealing with trauma in their past, dealing with disillusionment of marriages, whatever it is. I've seen that. And instead of looking in the mirror and saying, like, what am I doing to cause these problems in my life and how can I fix them? That's a really hard thing to do. So instead, they go online and they search out conspiracy theories. They search out some type of enemy, either against them or just against a vulnerable group, based on conspiracy theories and nonsense and lies. And then what happens is they now have a cause. And so I don't have time to look in the mirror and think about how I'm screwing up my life. I need to spend all my time fighting the Freemasons by posting online 23 hours a day conspiracy theories and giving it a signal boost. And as more people, I think in 2025, are struggling with their lives, they feel economically insecure, mental health issues are on the rise, deaths of despair are on the rise, or at least are still a significant problem. Again, the way you solve that should be look in the mirror, figure out what you need to do for help, and then seek that out. That takes a lot of strength and a lot of effort. It's easier to invent a conspiracy or to latch on to a conspiracy that's already been invented and spend all your time dealing with that. So you can say, I don't have time to deal with my problems. I'm busy fighting the Freemasons as they try to take over the world. Um, so yeah, and then you have social media, which allows those conspiracies to grow and take root. If you've ever seen the movie, you should watch this movie called Bug, Bug. It's a really good movie. It stars Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon. Um, and I think it really talks about and demonstrates how easy it is for people when they are struggling with emotional problems, mental health problems, substance abuse, PTSD, when they're struggling with these things, how easy it is for them to, um, for lack of a better word, latch on to codependent relationships with others or with conspiracy theories. So, yeah, there you go. Well, it's not taboo to bring up, and if anybody were to ever act like it is taboo, then tell them they're being stupid. Look, not every Mason wants to discuss their Freemasonry, which is perfectly fine. Um, right? They don't have to, and they don't want to, then so be it. But if they're wearing a ring, wearing a jacket, whatever it is, and it's got a Masonic symbol on it, or if they're open about their Masonic membership, then the idea that they would become nervous about talking about it is very silly. So just go and approach them. Just say you're interested in being a Freemason and you'd like to learn more. If they don't have time to talk, that's fine, but it's worth. Um, the other thing you can do is just approach a Masonic lodge directly. But I'd also say ECO. Um, oh, I mean, there are people out there who that is their whole, that is their entire personality. I'm fighting the Freemasons. And when you look at them, their whole life seems to be falling apart around them. Like I said, I've known people who their marriages end. They're living in crummy apartments because their wife left them with the kids, and all of their energies is spent on online chat rooms talking about ways to fight the Freemasons, right? So, and it's like maybe you should focus on your own situation a little bit, but again, it's hard to do. I mean, if you do for whatever reason, maybe it's not the person's fault. Maybe they have mental health issues that have gone untreated. Maybe they didn't know they had those issues. Maybe they have substance abuse issues, which is not their fault. Um, who knows what happened? They lost their job, that created a downward spiral. But again, it's up to them to get themselves out of that situation, and that's a lot of hard work. It's much easier to fight the Freemasons, quote unquote. Um, so ECO, what I'd also say though is you need to be careful just because someone claims to be a Freemason or is wearing, let's say, a Masonic ring, that doesn't mean they're automatically a Freemason. They could be part of a clandestine lodge. You need to keep that in mind also. Um, FA, I 1,000,000% agree with you. In fact, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to post that on Twitter. Humanity needs intentional community. I think also you could get rid of the word somewhat intentional. You could just say humanity needs community, but I think intentional does provide some valuable information therein, in that, developing and creating community is not something, sometimes it can happen unintentionally a little bit, but by and large is an intentional act. Even in, let's say, a job, you can just sit there and go to work and go home and never talk to anybody within the lodge. Or sorry, at your work, or you can make an intentional effort to speak to people. And by doing so, you will develop a community at work. Um, I am too much handsome. That's what I am. Clandestine lodge, those are lodges that are not officially recognized. So it would be equivalent to if I decided to go to if I were to um, go to purchase a storefront and put a sign on it that says Cameron Adamson's dentist office, and then call myself a dentist. I can call myself that, but I would be a clandestine dentist in that it was baloney. In the same sense, there's nothing stopping anybody from putting a sign in front of their garage that says, Mark's Masonic Lodge, welcome. That doesn't make you an official Masonic body. To be an official Masonic body, you need the Grand Lodge in your jurisdiction to recognize you as such. And there's a process you go through for that. Um, there are a lot of people who call themselves Freemasons, but, you know, they've never been part of a Masonic lodge or organized within a Masonic lodge. They just claim to be one. Eastern Star is a group. It was founded in 1850 in Missouri or Mississippi. I think it was Missouri. It's for men and women. Originally, it was exclusive for women who were related to a Mason in some way, wife, mother, daughter, sister, if I recall correctly. Now it's much more open, but it's a Masonic group for men and women. It has much of the same type of ritual and memorization work as what would be considered a Blue Lodge or regular Freemasonry. Oh, RH is back with the jokes. So the Shriners are different. The Shriners is an independent body within Freemasonry, as is Scottish Rite, as is York Rite. It's just different pathways you can take after you get your third degree. The Shrine is probably the most focused on both public-facing charitable acts. They have the Shriners Hospitals, as well as they tend to be more of a hail fellow, well met kind of organization, in that they have a lot more banquets and dinners. It's kind of what they're more known for. They're a little bit more in some ways, the fun side of Freemasonry. Um, they're known for driving those little cars around. They have the funny hats, fezzes. He could have been both. Yeah, that happens. There are many men back in the day who were Mason and then joined the Scottish Rite and the Shrine and Scottish Rite for that matter. So, no, it absolutely can happen. Um, he never ate dinner at home at that point. To my knowledge, Diddy slash Puff Daddy was not a Freemason. I mean, I can't say for sure. I've never seen any evidence that he was, though. Well, I don't think he was. I don't think he was, but okay. That seems highly doubtful to me. Good coffee. By the way, tonight I'll be going to Tilbury, so I'll be taking some pictures. You'll see it in my stream on my social media channels, which is why it's so important, if you can, to follow me on social media. Um, it's a really important way to support this channel. I am in a wheelchair. I mean, I was born missing my legs, missing them both above the knees. And I used to use artificial limbs, and I enjoy artificial limbs, but I prefer my wheelchair, I think. No, they're just trolling, FA, ignore them. Um, just ignore them. Um, I might put them in timeout, we'll see. But I try not to. By the way, hundreds of Met officers and staff have now declared Freemason links. Again, I have my own views on that. I'm going to share this article and then I'll talk about this tomorrow on the stream, more than likely. I'll read this article. Interesting enough, in this article, it says here the biblical from BBC. Nice. A lot of people were in the Shriner Band. The biblical figure King Solomon is central to Freemasonry. Um, His construction of the first temple in Jerusalem is reflected in Masonic ideals of self development and spiritual growth. Masons are required to believe in a supreme being, though not be a member of a specific religion, and are reportedly prohibited from discussing politics or religion at Masonic meetings. Um, Freemasons wear symbolic aprons and progress through degrees of membership, with the phrase giving someone the third degree originating from its final stage of initiation. So I was just talking about King Solomon, and there he is, why he's important. The biblical figure King Solomon is central to Freemasonry. I would not use the term central. I think that's a little bit too strong. I would say important to Freemasonry. I would say the item that is central to Freemasonry are the square and compasses. Therefore, stone masonry is central to Freemasonry. But the biblical figure King Solomon is important to Freemasonry. His construction of First Temple in Jerusalem reflected in Masonic ideals of self-development and spiritual growth. Again, the wise ruler archetype. So when I talked about why Freemasonry, or why we talk about King Solomon, and whether he is a exclusively mythological figure, a mythological and historical figure, or a historical figure, that's why. So the celebrities posing with one eye closed, that is blue car effect or blue car syndrome. So what I mean by that is if you're looking for it, you're going to start to see celebrities with one eye closed because you think it's something relevant. For example, if you know, go through, I've seen, I don't know, millions. I have no idea what the number would be. A ton of pictures of celebrities in my life. I cannot think of any particular times where I've seen them posing with one eye closed or one eye covered. However, if I were to type into Google, for example, celebrities posing with one eye covered, a whole bunch of images would pop up. Some of them might even be AI at this point. We don't even know. Yes, the second temple, the destruction was 70 AD, but the first temple was about 1,000 years before that, to my knowledge. Or no, even more than that. I think 3,000 years before that, right? No, 100. When was it? I believe King Solomon's temple is dated. Let me double check the date. Around 950 BC. Let me double check if I got the date right. By the way, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you're new. I have an article written about the date, so let's see if I can find it. I think it was 950 BC. Here it is. I don't know anything about Monarch MK Ultra, but I tend to be very hesitant about believing, for example, that the entertainment industry has some type of whatever it's called, some type of nefarious scheme other than the desire to get people to go see movies and such. 950 BC. Yes, I was right. 950 BC is when the first temple was supposedly built, and then about 1,000 years later, you had the second temple. Um, I mean, sure, that's a very. They are officially recognized by many Masonic groups and jurisdictions. Prince Hall was started, I used to know the dates and I'm always forgetting them, around 1776, when a gentleman by the name of Prince Hall, who was African American or black, he was denied admission into a lodge in Boston due to racist beliefs at the time, racist tendencies. As a consequence, he first joined a Masonic lodge that was actually a military lodge chartered out of Ireland. But then eventually he realized other black men throughout America may be facing similar discriminations. So he started, I believe it was called African Lodge, if I recall correctly, Prince Hall Freemasonry, which was at the time a Masonic order to allow black men to join and not worry about facing discrimination or facing, denial of admission. Martin Luther King's father and father-in-law, if I recall correctly, were both themselves Prince Hall Masons. It was also very, very important in terms of providing black men and African American men, but also black men in Canada and around the world with a place to develop civic skills, meeting places, community, and supports at a time when they were very often being discriminated against. I have a really kind of um, I've like in some ways mixed feelings about Prince Hall in the sense that I hate the fact that it started after or as a consequence of discrimination and racism, because I think those are terrible things. But as a consequence, you end up with this organization called Prince Hall, which has added a great deal of character and brotherhood to the family of Freemasonry, and I'm grateful it exists. So it's complicated. It's possible to both be sad as to how something was developed and happy that it exists. Thank you, Total Tech. I appreciate that. No, Masons do not do rituals with psychedelic mushrooms. King Solomon existing 65% yes, 35% no. So there you go. I'm curious if we're actually going to see America attack Iran. Um, all he says is help for protesters is on the way. I don't know what that means. Um, Again, this type of stuff matters. It affects Freemasonry. We're going to give this, let's say, another couple minutes, then we'll be ending the stream. I will be back on at 1 a.m. tonight. Don't forget, you mark in your calendars the 21st 24-hour live stream. Consider doing a super chat, become a member, all that good jazz. All right, I think we'll end this stream. A lot of stuff there. I think we'll end this stream now. Be back on at 1 a.m. Thank you guys for joining. I will see 1 a.m. Eastern. 1 a.m. Eastern. That's a good point, FA. Whenever I give time, I'm always giving them Eastern Standard Time. What happened to the Greek oracles? Which Greek oracles? I mean, the Greek everything. Well, Greece still exists. Greek people still exist, but if you're talking about ancient Greece, none of them are around anymore. Just like ancient Rome, just like Babylon, just like Egypt, just like ancient Chinese civilizations or civilization. I mean, things change. Things change over time. Hello, Sean Hairline. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. No worries. I hope I answered them well. I hope I answered them successfully. Um, like I said, consider a 99-cent super chat even. It seems really small, but believe me, 99 cents helps out big time. So consider so. Well, I'm 42, so if I were to go tomorrow, I would not be very young. Um, but I would be younger, I guess. I think I got a few more years left in me. I guess we'll see. In my experience, communication actually helps people live longer lives, but what do I know? Thank you, Effie. That's incredibly kind of you. Um, I mean, it's funny. It's not even, a lot of people think that like a 99-cent super chat or a dollar super chat or whatever it is won't help. It actually helps more than people think. It's not just the dollar itself. Doing so, what that indicates to the algorithm is people are interested in this stream, people are enjoying it. That means they're more than likely to show to other people. So, or show it to other people in the stream. So, you want to keep that in mind. All right, guys. Well, I mean, the idea of a sacrifice or something being sacrificial is really, really valuable, right? Now, obviously, we should not be sacrificing people. Freemasons do not sacrifice people, just for the record. However, within Freemasonry, there is kind of not a call, but maybe in some ways an expectation that one is be willing to sacrifice their time, at least some of their time, to attend lodge to help a brother. I think sacrifice is very valuable. Again, the sacrifice needs to be personal, though, right? For example, one of my issues with this idea of sacrifice is very often people will want others to sacrifice without sacrificing themselves or of themselves, right? You sacrifice your time, you sacrifice your money, whatever. I'm not going to. That's not a healthy way for, I think, a society to operate. Um, Everybody needs to have something in. Everybody needs to have some skin in the game. And sometimes that can come from being able to sacrifice money or charity. Sometimes that comes from sacrificing your time, sacrificing your efforts, your energies, whatever it might be. Um, but thank you again, Effie. That's incredibly kind of you. I mean, I don't quite know what you mean by that, Corvin. Do you mean here on the stream? Like, obviously there's only so much I can know. Like I don't know who you are, Corvin, other than you're somebody on YouTube who found my stream. I guess what I'll say is I have to try to use my reason and my observations and recognize and appreciate the fact that I could very well get things wrong, and that's okay as well. I've got a lot of things wrong in my life, but I do my best. I don't communicate with the spiritual world. I'm not one who believes in spiritualism and communicating with the spiritual world and all that jazz. So I guess what I'd say is if I ever were to, believe, if I ever were to, for example, believe in the spiritual or that I'm communicating with spirits or demons or anything like that, I would say probably I'm having mental health issues. I didn't think so either. So it sounds like you now think the opposite, which is fine. People are allowed to, you're welcome to believe in the spiritual side of things. I'm pretty skeptical of it in my older age. But again, going back to what I said before, I think the important thing to remember is um, whenever you're trying to determine beliefs or, whatever it might be, I think it's really important that um, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, that you just try to use your reason and your observations, make smart decisions, don't believe things because you want to believe them, etc., etc. All right, guys. I think we're going to end this stream. I'll be back on 1 a.m. Eastern. Thank you, as always, for being here. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll try to share some stuff from Tilbury. I'll let you know how it goes.